Hey everybody, today we're going to do another trade review. Today it is going to be Hellboy, Conqueror Worm by Mike Mignola. This one is from 2020, I'm sorry, 2005, and we're going to get into it in just a moment. So, Conqueror Worm was originally a four-issue miniseries published in the early 2000s, maybe 2001, 2002. This particular copy I have here is from 2003, and it's published by Dark Horse. So, just a little bit about Dark Horse Publishing. So, Dark Horse was an independent comic book company formed in 1986. Some of the more popular hits from the 80s and 90s would have been Frank Miller's Sin City, Paul Chadwick's Concrete, and John Byrne's Next Men. So, Mike Mignola has a, sorry, excuse me, take a little sip. Mike Mignola has had a decades-long career in comics that spans Marvel, DC, independent comics, as well as doing movie work. Early work for Marvel includes stuff for The Incredible Hulk, Alpha Flight, the first Rocket Raccoon miniseries. His DC work includes things like Cosmic Odyssey and Gotham by Gaslight. Mike, I'm sorry, has done designs and storyboards for films such as Bram Stoker's Dracula, Disney's Atlantis, and Blade 2. You probably know him best, though, for his creation of Hellboy, which inspired two movies, a reboot movie, as far as live action, I think animated film and a video game, in kind of a comics mini franchise featuring other characters who are part of the Hellboy universe. So comics about Lobster Johnson, the BRTD, and basically revolves around that whole world. He's also done stuff like The Amazing Screw-On Head and Baltimore. Again, all these are for Dark Horse Comics. What the hell? So the title Conqueror Worm comes from a poem by Edgar Allan Poe symbolizing death. In the comic, Conqueror Worm is a literal monster that will destroy the world. Hellboy and his partner Roger the Homunculus go on a mission. A rocket that was shot into space during World War II by the Germans is now finally returning to Earth. Hellboy's supervisor wants them to find and discover what's going on with it, and whoever else might be interested in. So they meet their contact. They eventually find out that one of Hellboy's old foes and his daughter appear to be behind everything. Hellboy and Roger discover how this relates to the old pulp hero Lobster Johnson and an old alien god. Also, Hellboy's supervisors at the BPRD don't trust Roger and have planted a bomb in Roger's artificial body. A supervisor gives gives Hellboy a detonator and tells him to use it if Roger goes out of control. The story deals with common Magnolia tropes of monsters, Nazis, and cosmic horror. So Mike Mignola has a very distinct art style that combines like Jack Kirby, Alex Toth, Frank Frazetta, Wally Wood, Bernie Wrightson. Mike has also mentioned Mike Kaluta and the studio guys. I guess the studio is an art studio established by Jeff Jones, Bernie Wrightson, Barry Smith, and Mike Kaluta back in the 70s. And they would do comic book art, fantasy art, commercial art, and whatnot. Mike's panel layout is very simple, direct, very old school, not a lot of dazzle, but very effective pacing and plotting. Nice compositions. I've read in or heard in an interview where Mike said that he was an inker when he first came to comics and he had to learn how to do comics. And so I guess this was the 80s. So this would have been Marvel under Jim Shooter. And Jim Shooter, of course, is a guy who learned to do comics as a teenager back in the 60s under DC. So there's that whole sort of simple, direct uh, Silver Age storytelling where everything's very clear. You can kind of follow things, through the visuals, even if you don't know what the dialogue's saying or the captions are saying. So yeah, so Mike was learning a lot from, Bronze Age guys and Silver Age guys, and yeah, like I said, there that's type of visual storytelling is very straightforward and clear. Okay, so we got some of this. Ooh, if you can see it. Uh, okay, this shows up a little bit better. Okay. Mike has mentioned that he likes Victorian tales and Gothic horror. He stated that Hellboy started as kind of a tongue-in-cheek sketch that he did at a convention, and then when he decided to do as a comic, it was a way for him to do what he's always wanted to do, which is to draw monsters, but not take it overly serious. It's easy to see the influence of old monster movies, horror movies. As a concept, he is also pretty heavily influenced by fairy tales, old folklore. There's a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft. There's the trope of Nazis as generic bad guys. And we're never really told exactly why the Nazi philosophy is bad. We just kind of take it for granted that they're evil. Mike's mentioned how old pulp heroes and the works of Robert E. Howard and Michael Moorcock figured out how he'd approach Hellboy stories. He's mostly done Hellboy as a series of mini-series, and Hellboy kind of drifts in and out of different adventures, and we visit him at kind of like different points in time. The themes that, sorry, excuse me, that Magnolia deals with in the story, it's not too heavy, not too super deep, but the world building is very fascinating. A lot of the comic is really about atmosphere and mood, and although, of course, there's no lack of action, I should say, but it's old castles, monsters, sci-fi, all these elements exist parallel to each other, and we believe that Hellboy lives in an actual world where these events can take place. um, and we also kind of feel that there's other things that are probably going on with Hellboy and the other characters, even if we're not seeing them at this particular time. The message is pretty clear, old fashioned, not too complicated. We get good versus evil, compassion versus hate. Order versus chaos in a way, but like I said, old-fashioned, straightforward heroism and sacrifice. And not every Hellboy story is about end of the world threats. But in this story here, we do get that. We get old gods, enduring myths. But again, all this ancient evil and stuff like that is balanced off by Hellboy's personality as a regular person and a caring guy who's not afraid to punch someone when it's warranted. Here we also have a story that, in its own way, kind of touches on friendship and, like I said, sacrifice. And while it's not a story that's going to move most people to tears, the ending is kind of touching in its own way. So, in conclusion, Conqueror Worm is a pretty great comic. It's fast paced, it's full of ideas, likable characters, snappy dialogue, great atmosphere. You have a whole great mythos surrounding the Hellboy character. The art's simple and direct, yet it draws you in. Good layouts, decent compositions, great colors, and so it's easy to see how Mike Mignola was able to carve out his own unique place in the comics world.